Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my parents' basement, your parents' basement, our parents' basement, and today we're talking about Robert Zemeckis' Here. Here was directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Eric Roth and Robert Zemeckis, and starring Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Paul Bettany, and Kelly Reilly. So right off the bat, I suppose I'll talk about the fact that it is a fixed camera that stays stagnant in that one position for the majority of the movie. It is a very bold concept, a very challenging task to take to make a movie interesting when you can't have the camera move in interesting ways and you're kind of always stuck in this fixed position. And then you also have to have every scene revolve around the space that we can see in this area. And so it creates a challenge. And for the most part, I think Robert Zemeckis did a good job. It's edited really well to kind of stay visually interesting, even though the camera's stuck in its spot. But at the same time, I think that also hinders the movie to a certain degree, just because I think one of my major concerns going in was that there were gonna be comical elements of how they try and make everyone in the frame remain in the frame, even though realistically they maybe shouldn't have. I thought they did a fairly good job of keeping that realistic, but for the most part, it doesn't do enough stylistically to, I think, warrant its existence. This movie is also very prevalent at exploring emotions and familial connections, and I feel like this fixed position of the camera really hurts influencing those emotions and creating interesting blocking with the camera. Like I said, I feel like it's not interesting enough as a concept to warrant how much you lose moving the camera. And with that fixed positioning of the camera, it was especially prevalent to have interesting blocking in this movie, because the camera cannot be a part of that motion. It cannot influence the audience's emotions. The blocking therefore has to do it. It has to represent how people are feeling and reflect different things. And I feel like it's very, like I said earlier, I think they did a good job of making it realistic in that characters don't move weirdly or stand in places that they wouldn't stand just to keep everyone in the frame. They move it a lot. They kind of keep it well oriented in that way. But I just felt it was never anything special. It didn't make up again for the camera remaining still. It was just kind of a lot of standing and talking or sitting and talking. And I will give it, for a 90-minute movie, it did stay pretty interesting for a lot of sitting and talking and standing and talking. But I definitely think, again, it's not a masterpiece of blocking that students in film school are going to study. And this film obviously has a very star-studded cast in many ways, with Tom Hanks and Robin Wright and Paul Bettany and Kelly Reilly all coming in to basically play the most developed characters of all of the ones that we explore. And I think the performances are generally good. Tom Hanks, obviously, multi-time Oscar winner, one of the best actors of all time. He's not going to disappoint. Robin Wright's solid as well, but I feel like Kelly Reilly and Paul Bettany really steal the show. To me, I think their characters had the most depth, the most terrain to emotionally explore, and I would have liked to further go into them. They were the more complex individuals. They were the ones that really ate up a very large chunk of the story, and you could see them kind of evolve as time went on. And I thought that was really interesting, because where other characters stay stagnant or they have the same problems, Bettany and Reilly, they really kind of have legitimate arcs throughout the movie that I really enjoyed watching, and their performances are both fantastic. They're really great underrated actors of today that don't get enough credit. And as weird as it probably was for them playing Tom Hanks' parents, I thought they did a fantastic job. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the movie takes place showcasing time from the dawn of the dinosaurs to the present day. And again, with the stagnant camera, that's an interesting concept. But I feel like it was too expansive for this movie, especially because the heart of it is Tom Hanks' family, especially his parents, him, his wife, and then his children. And so going back to the dinosaurs was a little unnecessary. It doesn't really do much for the movie. There is a little bit of tie-in, archaeologically speaking, with the Native American portion of the film that briefly are intercut. But that, along with Ben Franklin's illegitimate son, the lazy boy inventor, the random pilot, it all just felt too self-indulgent for me. It felt like it was padding a script that didn't have enough content for just what it was initially conceived to be. And so while it didn't necessarily take me out of the movie, or that I thought those sequences were badly done, it just felt pointless. And the jumps to in the 2020s make a little bit more sense, because at that point Tom Hanks's family has moved out, and now the house is up for sale and new people live there, and it felt very cringe, because it's trying to be, in the 2020s, it's trying to be relevant to the times, but there's just something about like replicating stuff that I lived through that makes me cringe out, because it just doesn't feel like it should be in a movie, and the way they did it just wasn't very well done either. Like I said, it was very cringe. It cringed me out really, really hardcore. Then I was just kind of like rubbing my eyes, going this makes the most sense of any of them, because like I said, again, they moved out, these new people have moved in, but it just all felt too much. It was like really focused on the heart of the story, which is this family. And I feel like this would have been a really impactful moment if the camera would have left with them, because it's representing their actual leaving. But instead it stays with with the random family, and then going back in time, we see all these other people that have no connection to the main characters, that don't line up with anything thematically. They took their concept of this one point throughout time a little bit too seriously. And so again, while I don't think those points were boring or overdone, or in any way is badly acted or something, it just didn't feel necessary to what the movie was trying to say. And at the very worst, they wasted my time. And like I kind of said with that previous point, where all the other characters felt tacked on, and how I said Reilly and Bettany are really the heart of this movie, emotionally speaking, Tom Hanks's family is the epicenter. That's where most of our time is spent, exploring them and their relationships with one another, and their evolution as a family in this house. And to me, I feel like the movie should have been solely more focused on them, and especially Paul Bettany and Kelly Reilly. Like I said before, they give the best performances. Their characters are the most interesting to me, and I think they had the most to kind of explore, and like everything is kind of half-baked in the movie. And again, I don't know how much time could have really been developed to this if you continue with the fixed point. And again, they're moving quickly with the time jumps and everything. But I really felt like when it finished, that because it was so impactful for the story, because that was such the heart of it, it was weird that those other elements added so little, if anything at all, that you would take away from what you're really trying to drive home, to waste time dealing with just little scenes or pointless gags or whatever it may be. Like, I literally don't understand what the lazy boy inventor had to do with anything. Or the brief scenes where we see Benjamin Franklin or his illegitimate son, or any of that. It feels so pointless to this movie that's about, well, generally about all the different things that happen in this one location. It's really about this family's connection to this place. And all that other stuff, while interesting to like brainstorm, to think about, to have in the back of your head, I feel like it should have been wiped away once that emotion of familial connection to a location really started to take hold of the story. It'd have been one thing if this movie was an anthology about all the different stories that happen here, and each one was some interesting tale of hardship and heartache and just what a place can mean to somebody. But instead, it was really just about Tom Hanks's family, and then all the other random things that briefly play effect but don't really. I don't know. So this movie is a drama, and so it's very much focused on family connections and the arguments and the disagreements and everything that comes with being a part of a family. And we've all been there. We all know it's not always roses and sunshine and lollipops. Sometimes it's hard, and that's just part of being, a part of the human experience. And so this movie tries to play into those harsher moments, but in those more dramatic moments. And with the exception of a few scenes, I felt all too often it was overdramatic, melodramatic, and it felt so contrived. And it didn't feel like there was genuine emotion behind anything, just, oh, well, they would be something like this. It felt so forced, and none of the characters felt explored enough for me to be invested into any emotion they ever felt, except for, again, maybe Paul Bettany and Kelly Reilly's characters. Otherwise, it was just kind of like, I don't know you well enough to care. And I'm not going to get into spoilers, because I'm always of the mindset that no matter what somebody says, no matter how much you trust or value their opinion, always watch a movie for yourself just so you can see it for yourself, inform your own opinion. So I'm not going to go into spoilers, but watching this movie, there is one crucial emotional sequence near the end of the film that happens off screen. And I couldn't understand why it happened off screen. Again, I said earlier, it would have been interesting that if at this point in time, the camera leaves its fixed position along with the characters. And that, again, is a very physical representation of what is happening in the story. And instead, the camera remains still, and then we get this time jump again, where off-screen a very crucial thing has happened. And I just couldn't understand why that was the way it was. The whole movie is trying to be built around this relationship. And we've seen all these other important aspects of the relationship, and this final big moment is not shown. It happens off-screen in a time that we did not see. And that was quite the slap in the face, I think, to, again, trying to connect on an emotional level. And now that this big emotional moment has happened, the camera could finally become unbalanced. It could finally be overcome with movement and overmove, become like a Paul Greengrass movie, but instead it remains fixed, and I don't get it. And with that, I give here a C. C is average, and to me this was an average movie. There's good performances. There's not too much to say overall about the direction because there isn't really any. You could talk a little bit about the editing, but again, there really isn't any, except for how they cut from different time periods with just like pictures and stuff. And that was interesting. It was visually appealing for a movie that's otherwise not very visually appealing. But all too often, they say go big or go home. This movie went home and stayed there. Literally, it just literally stayed home the whole time in that one fixed position. They tried something. It didn't work. I didn't even talk about the de-aging CGI, which sometimes looks more convincing than others. Obviously, Tom Hanks and Robert Wright looked about 30 when they were supposed to be playing 18-year-olds. So there's that, but I don't really get into that because, what are you going to critique? The CGI artists who worked tirelessly to try and de-age people to be 40, 50 years younger than they actually are. So I'm kind of used to it now. So it is what it is. Make a little comment about it, move on. But anyway, so to me, this was basically an average movie. Not Robert Zemeckis' best. Obviously, he's far superior films. This one probably isn't even worth mentioning when you bring up his filmography. But that being said, it's a fine movie. It's an interesting concept. It has its moments of enjoyment, but overall, if you didn't plan on seeing this one, by no means should you change that arrangement and go see it. But if you were interested in it, give it a watch. Maybe you'll like it a little bit more than me. That's what movies are all about. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching my review of Here by Robert Zemeckis. And we will see you next time in My Parents' Basement, Your Parents' Basement, Our Parents' Basement.